Welcome to the Bloomington Rotary Club's weekly celebration of service for June 22nd, 2021. I'm your current president, Ashley Wesley. Thank you for being here. Natalie, please show the flag for 15 seconds of respectful silence. We ask that you remain on mute and take this time to personally reflect. Thank you. And now Sarah Laughlin will share a reflection.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here on this beautiful, beautiful June day. Ashley asked me to talk about Teachers Warehouse a little bit, and as I'm reflecting about my participation there, I'm realizing that it's one of the things that helped me through the pandemic was being involved with the wonderful people there at Teachers Warehouse. And, you know, we came back in early June as soon as the stay-at-home order was lifted, and most of the volunteers returned, not everyone, but most of us. And it was, you know, seeing those people every week and working on something that was bigger than myself that kind of helped me get through those dark days, especially the early ones. We've been open for teachers. We were open all year. For teachers, we kind of decided that as long as there was school, we were going to be there no matter what. And so we managed to have almost as many teachers shopping as we would have had in a normal year, which is truly remarkable and a testament to teachers just, you know, dogged determination to keep teaching. We heard stories about how they had to modify their classrooms and their days and their teaching in every which way to just survive. And you heard from Judy DeMuth earlier about, you know, in a program about how the school corporation and every school corporation had to modify absolutely everything to keep going. But so we have been back, and now we're in summer, and summer at Teachers Warehouse looks different. We're open for donations on Wednesday afternoons, but we're there almost every afternoon, inventorying and getting ready for next year. And I want to give a shout out to Marcus Debro, who's new member of our board, and he arranged for the new facilities folks at MCCSE to come over. And as a result of that, we're getting our floors polished and re-waxed, and we're very excited about that. And we're also planning for a return of the supply drive. And so that will be on August 7th. Saturday, August 7th. It's always the first Saturday in August. So mark your calendars now. You'll be getting an invitation to volunteer pretty soon. We're still working on confirming a couple of locations. If we do that, we'll have one more location than we've ever had before. So we need about 50 volunteers on that day to cover all the bases of collecting supplies and bringing stuff back to Teachers Warehouse and then sorting through it, counting it, and stowing it at Teachers Warehouse. It's always been a really fun day, partnership with the Rotary clubs in Bloomington and beyond. This year we'll have the Northside Exchange Club as well helping us, and the Teachers Warehouse board and all the volunteers we can muster. So I hope you'll set aside August 7th and look forward to seeing you in person. Collecting school supplies for Teachers Warehouse.
Thank you, Sarah. That's so exciting. I already put it on my calendar.
Yes.
Okay, I don't see any guests with us today. A rare occurrence. If there is anyone I've missed, please speak now. I don't believe so. Just a lovely group of all Rotarians. How about that? Okay, thanks to our producers, Natalie Blaze, Michael Shermis, who is not with us, but he has to be mentioned, Sally Gaskell, and Aaron Davis. And our roundabout reporter for this week is Judy Schroeder. One birthday, John Hobson on June 24th. Happy birthday. And two membership anniversaries, Amy Osajima, 4 years, and myself, 6 years. Yay! My first meeting with the Rotary Club was the scholarship meeting, and I was hooked ever since. I have a quick announcement. An article about our very own Charlotte Zitlow could be found in Sunday's HT, entitled Wisdom and an Afternoon Tea, written by Jill Bond. Jill shared some wisdom from Charlotte that she gleaned from her visit, including the following reflection. Community is a concept worthy of deep thought and careful action. People like Charlotte give us a community we love and care about, but it's up to us to steward this community forward. I thought that was very poignant for our group now and always. Nice to see you in the paper, Charlotte. Our Rotary Changeover Celebration social event is scheduled for Thursday, July 8th from 5 to 7 at Switchyard Pavilion. This is a family-friendly event, so bring your kids, bring your spouses, bring your friends, and we'll have hors d'oeuvres from One World Catering and a cash bar provided. You don't need to bring anything else but yourself, a little bit of cash if you want to purchase a beverage, and a mask if you're not vaccinated. We ask that you wear. You have received an email requesting your RSVP. If you could check that out and let us know if you plan to attend, it would help us plan for the event. But we hope to see you there to celebrate changing over to a new Rotary year. And now for a few happy dollars. Does anyone have any happy dollars to share? Connie?
Thank you, President Ashley. I have 5 happy dollars for this gorgeous day. Oh my goodness, it's a 10 out there. It's a real June Hoosier day.
Martha?
Hi, I have some happy dollars, a little unconventional maybe. I'd like to make a donation to the Diversity Fund in honor of Raj Hadawi. Raj has been coaching me through recovery from a strange hand injury, and we just had a little online in the group before the meeting started, a little demonstration of telemedicine. So I'm very grateful for all that Raj has done for this club and for me, and he's just a great friend. Thank you. That's $100, by the way, for diversity.
Martha, thank you so much.
Oh, sure.
Trent Deckard.
Thank you very much. And I have some happy dollars because I'm joined actually by a guest who has arrived. You all know our guest probably better than you know me as a member here, but Forrest Gilmore from Beacon is with us. Forrest is he's a huge force in this community, helping many different efforts, including our houseless. And I'm just excited to have him here. He's a longtime friend and confidant. And I'd like to see him come back to Rotary a few more times, if not a lot more. So good to have him with us.
Welcome, Forrest. We're so glad you're here. Raj.
I have 10 happy dollars as 2 of my grandchildren, 16 and 13, went out for the very first time to buy a grocery to their family.
That is quite the celebration.
I have 10 happy dollars to share as well. I'll share 5 for my wife Cindy and 5 for me on 2 things. One is I got to see an erupting volcano up close and personal for the first time ever, because we were traveling to Iceland and they have a volcano that's erupting there, and that was, I've been a volcano freak since I was about that high. So anyway, that was really fun. Or late pandemic stuff. This is what you can do when you're vaccinated. And the other thing is my church has resumed in-person mass, weekly celebrations and services. And so I'm going to return to church and see all my friends that I haven't, church friends I haven't seen in so long. So that's my happy dollars. Thank you.
Very happy indeed. Judy Schroeder.
Yes, I'd like to contribute to Teachers Warehouse in honor of my younger son, a professor of biology at Truman State in Missouri, because he and his husband, whom I have not seen for 1.5 years, are coming to visit, and I'm just so happy.
Oh, congratulations. Any other final happy thoughts to share?
I have $10. Well, it should be $100 million. But my son and his wife and daughter are coming this week. I haven't seen my daughter-in-law and my granddaughter since my grandson died. So I'm very, very excited about this. I'm really happy. All the way from Minnesota, which isn't that far after all.
Oh, I'm so glad they can come.
I am too, really.
I don't know that anybody has mentioned it, but for the HT, I was able to cover the Juneteenth celebration at Switchyard Park. And it almost didn't happen because of the storm, but it did come off a little bit later. And lots and lots of people were there for an interracial, interfaith, and intergenerational event, which was a wonderful celebration of liberation and freedom.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tim, for sharing that.
Let me add $5 to my happy dollars, because I met a very nice man from the Bahamas at that celebration. He was sitting there by himself, and I sat down to talk to him to find out who he was and whether I knew him. And I learned a lot about the Bahamas, which I didn't know. So it was very educational. And he kept saying, he teaches history in Nassau. And he said, we have to know about history in order to make our world better. We have to know what happened in order to go forward. So that was interesting.
Thank you, Charlotte. Steve Engel, I saw your hand.
Yes, I had a happy 5 for a nice Father's Day. I heard from all 3 of my kids, and my daughter even sent me a big basket of exotic fruit. So that was a nice day.
Well, happy Father's Day to all fathers. A few days late. All right, if we don't have any other takers, we'll get to our program. Steve, if you'd like to hop back on and introduce our speaker.
Yes, I'm delighted to have our speaker today, Professor Kelly Eskew. She's a professor of business law and ethics at the IU Kelley School of Business. But she started out as an attorney in private practice for 10 years, and that's where she got some great experience, I'm sure, that led to her expertise as a teacher. She actually represented some large corporations and hospitals, the Indiana Horse Racing Commission, the doctors who invented Gatorade, among others. And she served as in-house counsel to the IU Health system, managing malpractice and employment litigation. And the year prior to joining the Kelley faculty, she was worked at the ACLU and litigated civil rights cases. So she's had a lot of real practical law experience, and I'm sure that's led to some real expertise in the classroom. But Kelly, Professor Eskew, I should say, recently received the John Monsignore Memorial Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Law Teaching from the Academy of Legal Studies and Business. This is a national award that recognizes her commitment to the undergraduate study of law and teaching reflects humanitarian concern. So congratulations, Kelly. In 2020, Professor Eskew received the Innovative Teaching Award, the Eyster Teaching Scholars Award, and the Herman B. Wells Teaching Excellence Awards. Oh man, She was recognized with the Kelly School's Panchar Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching in 2019. Folks, I'm sensing a real pattern here. That looks like 5 major awards in about 2 years, teaching awards. So it makes me want to sign up for some of Kelly's classes, that's for sure. Professor Eskew currently teaches business and human rights, sustainability, law and policy, business ethics, renewable energy sector law and policy, and business and global poverty alleviation. She is also the faculty chair of the Sustainability Advisory Council. Impressive resume. So today she's going to speak to us about the UN's sustainability goals and how they reflect the values of Rotary. So please welcome our distinguished teaching professor, Kelly Eskew. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you so much, Steve. I want to tell you first that I am in my office because there's someone working in my home with a puppy, a kitten, and a cat. And we have been in here together since 8:45 this morning when I had an earlier teacher training I was attending. I tried to put the puppy out during Happy Dollars and she didn't want to go. So anyway, we may get interrupted, but I'm really grateful to be with you today. I teach in this area of sustainability. I teach in our sustainable business co-major at the Kelly School of Business. And I think when most people think of sustainability, that they think of the environment, which is very appropriate, that they think about things that are eco-friendly, things that are green. But the United Nations came up with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as part of its 2030 agenda. And these are in place and they are being used by businesses and by governments and by lots of non-governmental organizations to take a much broader view of sustainability. And so I want to talk about that with you today and show you how Rotary is really living the values of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So let me share my screen. And when I teach, I don't know who we is. I tend to say we a lot when I mean me. Fortunately, I don't do this in real life, so that would be insufferable. But when I talk about sustainability in my classes, what I'm generally talking about are the UN SDGs, this very broad view. And within the business school, I'm talking about triple bottom line or people, planet, profit. Now, sustainability really came into the lexicon. We really started hearing this word in the 80s. And I'm sure that many of you, but not all of you, can remember that there was a big shift sort of in how we lived in the 80s. There was houses in the United States are 50% bigger than they were prior to the 1980s. People are bigger. On average, American men and women are about 20 pounds heavier, a huge rise in the financial sector. And people really started to, the environmental movement that had started in the 60s and 70s, really started to pay attention to what we were doing to our environment, going back to how we usually think of sustainability. And you can see the definition that came out of a UN commission, the Brundtland Commission in 1987. It goes to this idea that Ray Anderson, who was a great industrialist and environmentalist, has shared, where he said, our take, make, waste, our linear approach to business, to our lives, is leaving a terrible legacy of diminishment and pollution and climate change for our children and their children, for generations not yet born. And as he says, it's the wrong thing to do. So let's look at the Sustainable Development Goals. Again, down here in the lower left-hand corner, 13, 14, 15, this is where we usually get the meat of our discussion around sustainability. But notice that the #1 goal for the United Nations is no poverty. And the great thing about this is that these align really well with the values of Rotary. So I spent a lot of time on the Rotary webpage. Rotary's values: clean water, promoting peace, supporting education, fighting disease, saving mothers and children, growing local economies, and protecting the environment. So Rotary is really doing all of this, and I think it's really exciting. I talked about this with Rotarac actually back in March, and I found that to be a really terrific conversation. It made them feel very proud of their organization, as they should. So let me start and go through these. I'm going to have to talk fast, I know, with this idea of no poverty. So Rotary is very focused on improving education. A legal story I tell my students is about students from 4 Detroit public high schools that sued the Detroit public school system for violating what they called their fundamental constitutional right to literacy. And they had quite a legal battle, but they got a ruling last year from the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals in the federal system that said, yes, children do have a fundamental right under the Constitution to literacy. This resulted in a nearly $700 million settlement between the state of Michigan and the Detroit public schools, where attainment in all 4 of the schools of basic skills like math, reading, and social studies was close to 0 on a scale of 0 to 100. The lawsuit itself describes classrooms full of rodent feces, tiles falling from the floor, 60 students in a classroom, using biology textbooks to teach chemistry. These aren't things that's hard for us to imagine, but these are things happening in our cities and certainly in school districts where the student population is poorer. In the United States, there are 36 million adults. That's 10% of our population that can't read better than the average 3rd grader. There was a study out of Detroit in 2003 that found that half the residents over the age of 16 were functionally illiterate. So there is a huge connection, as we can all appreciate, between poverty and education. And so Rotary's focus on improving education certainly goes to the UN SDG of no poverty. Zero hunger, 1 in 8 Americans is food insecure, meaning they don't have enough to eat at some point during the year. And that includes 13 million children. And those children are pretty evenly divided between urban, rural, and suburban areas. What's great is that Rotary has packaged more than 25 million meals in its Race Against Hunger program. And so again, we see the values of Rotary aligning with the SDGs and recognizing that these are the gravest dangers that we face if we want to have a sustainable world. Good health and well-being, well, Rotary's all over this, right? Rotary says on its website, we believe good healthcare is everyone's right. It is amazing to me what a revolutionary and even controversial statement that is in some forums, because this idea of healthcare as a basic human right has sadly, like many things, become politicized. But to have Rotary say it up front makes me feel so good about this organization. They go on to say, yet 400 million people in the world can't afford or don't have access to basic healthcare. But Rotary is involved with polio vaccines. Rotary has been at the forefront of trying to eliminate polio worldwide, but all types of vaccinations, which is great. Maternal fetal healthcare, which of course is important to my father, who is an obstetrician gynecologist. So I think all of these things are very exciting. Number 4, I've already talked about problems with education, but think about Rotary's programs to improve education. Hosting exchange students. My folks hosted, I think, 4 exchange students, 3 brothers from Brazil, not all at the same time, thank goodness, and a young man from Germany, sending our students to other countries, but also the Peace Fellows program, which helps students get masters and PhDs who have a history of working in the field of peace and development. And grants and scholarships, global grants for graduate students studying abroad. In one of Rotary's 6 causes qualify for scholarships through the various chapters: promoting peace, fighting disease, clean water, sanitation, hygiene, saving mothers and children, supporting education, and growing local economies. I mean, that's where you want to spend your money. Rotary provides education, immunizations, birth kits, and mobile health clinics. Women are taught how to prevent HIV transmission to their unborn children and to their infants, how to breastfeed, how to protect themselves and their children from disease. An estimated 5.9 million children a year die because of malnutrition and inadequate healthcare and poor sanitation. You know, these sad stories are the ones that I have to tell in my classroom, but you have to balance that if you want to inspire young people with solutions. And so the solutions are coming from a lot of these programs, but in lower income countries, 214 million women who want more control over their pregnancies don't have access to contraception, which leads to nearly 75 million women a year having unintended pregnancy. Women having access to basic reproductive care benefits the planet. It reduces population in countries and in families that can't support this kind of population growth. And it also helps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The original Tragedy of the Commons article from 1968 by Garrett Hardin was all about population growth. And it's a real problem. Although we here in the United States, we're starting to have negative growth. So lots of interesting stories going on. 63 million people in the United States are exposed to unsafe drinking water every year. There is uranium contamination of the water on the Navajo reservation. In Brady, Texas, they have radium in the water. And we've all heard about lead in Flint, but there's also lead in Milwaukee, in Pittsburgh, in Washington, D.C., in Newark, New Jersey, in East Chicago, Indiana. And I recently met someone who's working with the Indianapolis public school system who said they found lead in the water of every single school in the Indianapolis public school system. When you consider that lead causes irreversible brain insult in children, I cannot imagine the horror of a parent who finds out that their children have been exposed to lead while trying to get an education. Affordable and clean energy. 1 in 5 households in the United States have to forego food, medicine, or other necessities to pay their energy bill. And of the 25 million households that reported foregoing food and medicine, 7 million of them had to do it every single month. I mean, this picture's from Appalachia, as you might imagine, where many people don't have access to electricity. I mean, this is just the US. There's wide swaths of India and sub-Saharan Africa that don't have access to electricity. I have a whole class that focuses on the energy sector, not just its contributions to climate change, but how having access allows you to do your homework at night, to have more safety in your communities, to run a business after dark. These things that we take for granted. According to a 2016 assessment, 16,000 Navajo don't have access to electricity, not individually, Navajo households, and nearly a third don't have running water. Good jobs and economic growth. You know, COVID caused the worst economic recession since 1929, and we certainly see all kinds of positive signs here in Bloomington and in the news, but it's always important to remember that what happens in the market and what benefits our retirement accounts is not the same thing as what's happening in the economy. This is a picture that you probably saw. This is from April 2020. So imagine we were just weeks into the real COVID outbreak. This is when we were shut down across the country. And San Antonio Food Bank was giving away packages of food, and they had 6,000 families pre-register and 10,000 families show up. Imagine what has to be happening in our social structures and the flaws that are exposed in our social structures when 10,000 families show up in one community for food at a food bank just weeks after the economy shuts down. I mean, it didn't take much. I've read the statistic, and I believe it to be true, that 40% of American households are one paycheck away from financial ruin. This is a positive story, though. Industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Again, if you think about sustainability as resilience, you can see how all of these tie in. In Haiti, the power grid for the Respire Haiti Christian School was unreliable. They were relying on diesel. So Rotary clubs in Haiti and Colorado led a global grant project that installed a hybrid solar system and a microgrid, and now they use it to power interior and exterior lights, computers, fans, educational tools, and the grant program also initiated a literacy program, going back to our goal of good education. Reduced inequalities. The United States has the highest rate of income inequality of any of the G7 nations, the 7 largest developed economies that represent 60% of global wealth. Sustainable communities. We have 4 to 5 billion people on Earth that we refer to as the base of the pyramid. These and most of those folks are actually living on about $2 to $8 a day. But 800 million are in extreme poverty and live on about $1.90 a day. And Rotary members have been very passionate about supporting poverty alleviation. And they have done this through some great programs that we don't have time to talk about in detail, but one is microfinance, which is giving small dollar loans for people to help them start businesses or to obtain certificates or licenses. And another is an Adopt a Village program that is very cool. I'd note that these microfinance programs, the money usually goes to the women because the women reinvest the money in the community and in the children, whereas men, not all men, but men have a tendency to spend it on gambling, alcohol, and prostitution. And when I tell my class that, I always say, as usual. And they don't laugh at my joke, but it amuses me. Responsible consumption and production, 1/3 of our food ends up in landfills. And food degrading in landfills generates methane gas, which is the most potent of the greenhouse gases. You know, if you go to the grocery store, the bruised apples and tomatoes, you know, we buy groceries, bring them home, we'll still eat them if they're good, but the grocery store has to throw them out. And when that stuff goes to landfills, it's just a shame. Centro Abastos is a food wholesaler in Colombia that partnered with its local Rotary Club, as well as a chapter in California. And they worked to set up a system to use wasted food to teach people about how to work in the food industry, safe food handling practices, and they reduce food going to the landfill by 15%. Climate action. This slide just shows a variety of programs. This is a screen grab off Rotary's page. One thing they're engaged in is regenerative agriculture, which is just doing a better job of planting crops, rotating crops, reducing pesticide use, boosting the amount of carbon that is pulled into the ground to take it out of the atmosphere. It increases the organic matter in the soil. And I'd note that Rotary has an environmental sustainability Rotary Action Group. Life below water. I chose these because of a personal interest. This is the Beers Rotarians Enjoy Worldwide Fellowship, or BREW. Here they are in Accra, Ghana. But it's a worldwide organization of Rotarians who note the connection between drinking beer and the need for clean water. And they've used it to raise money for all kinds of water projects around the world. And chapters from California to Ghana to Ontario are involved. Rotary is also involved in reforestation efforts. Madagascar has great biodiversity, but was becoming rapidly deforested. A Rotary Club partnered with local nonprofits. They reforested 125 acres with native species. They also trained women in gardening techniques. They constructed toilets. They improved cook stoves and did a lot to benefit that community. I'm nearing the end. There's only 17 goals. I lost track of my time. As a lawyer, I want to share this with you, and this does not go to a Rotary program that I found, but it goes to something that's important to me. If you're poor and you commit a crime, you get a public defender. And public defenders work really hard, and most of them do a good job with heavy caseloads. But if you have a civil matter, a non-criminal matter, you don't get an attorney. 80% of lower income individuals do not have their civil legal needs met. And as you can see from this slide, evictions. Not everybody who's facing eviction has done something wrong. domestic violence, trying to get a protective order. There are 1.7 million potential civil legal cases, 70% of which are categorized as severe and life-altering, and 86% of those people don't get any help. It's a big problem, and finding solutions is very, very difficult. It can't be done just with lawyers doing pro bono work, and they do a lot of it. And it can't be done just by legal aid societies, but they can sure use your donations. And this last goal is the partnership for the goals. So we see more foreign direct investment going into poor communities. We see more official development assistance out there in the world. Rotary is doing so much in so many communities to address these goals. And I think that they're all interrelated. But starting with poverty is a good place to start. And of course, all of these go to the existential crisis of climate change that we're facing, and hopefully that the world is starting to understand as an emergency situation. So as I told the group at the beginning, I can talk for 90 minutes without notes, but if you only want me to talk for 20 minutes, I need notes. And I think I went over, but I appreciate your attention. I hope you're as inspired as I am by Rotary.
Wonderful presentation, Kelly. You didn't go over it all. You got plenty of time.
I'm happy to answer any questions if we've got a few minutes, or I can answer questions at the end of the session if people want to stay late.
I believe we have time for both if you can stay.
Sure.
After as well. Anyone have a question to start us off? Raj, I think I saw your hand first.
Kelly, thank you for coming. You put together all the social element in this country. Let's limit your answer to what's going on in this country. The first three items: poverty, health, education. Right, sued to get compensation to improve its education. Are we planning to sue for poverty? Are we planning to sue of lack healthcare to accomplish things? Two, as you teach your student all these items, which you allow them to recognize what is in hand around the country, are you also teaching them how to go about it to try to correct it?
Good
And
question.
since I'm growing up, I always told that identifying the issue will put you in a path to solve it.
Yeah.
Well, my goodness, we've been identifying this for decades, and we are still identifying and talking to it. So I would like to know your comments about what my questions are.
Those are great questions. Thank you. I mean, you asked, planning to sue about all these things, and the truth is, sorry, it's coming right at me. I will tell you that litigation, filing lawsuits, is only fun for litigators. I mean, it's a problem, and I start my semester in my sustainability law and policy class on this. The problem with using litigation to solve solutions is that somebody's already hurt. I mean, the relief is what we call ex post. Somebody is hurt, you start litigation, years later, you get a solution. But, you know, I already have cancer from DuPont putting chemicals. Now I have money, but I also have cancer. You know, I am 15 years out of high school and the lawsuit is resolved, but I already have fundamental aspects of my learning. So I don't want litigation to be the solution. We need ex ante approaches that identify the problems, as you say, and then put in solutions. How do we solve these solutions? Do I teach my students how to solve these solutions? Well, yes. I mean, that's our focus. So triple bottom line, people, planet, profit. How do companies address their environment? I mean, I'm in a business school, so I got to connect it to the business case. How do companies address their environmental issues? Well, they do what's called life cycle analysis. They look at their products and they look at the whole life of that product. I use the example of Levi's jeans, a pair of 501 jeans. From growing the cotton, the amount of earth that has to be used, the pesticides that go onto that cotton, et cetera, all the way through all the chemical processes to create the denim, the transportation and the shipping and the greenhouse gases those use, the products of the garment manufacturing and the way you treat the employees who sew your jeans. Then they go out to the consumer. Are you washing your jeans every single time you wear them? Are you putting them in the dryer? What do you do when you're done with them? Do you throw them in a landfill? Companies are doing life cycle analysis on all kinds of products, and this helps them, like it helped Levi Strauss, to eliminate chemicals from the process, to find more sustainable ways to do it. Doing carbon inventories, looking at scope 1, 2, and 3 greenhouse gas emissions. IU is doing something like this right now. I was just having lunch and talking about this. They're measuring the greenhouse gases that we produce on campus, but also all the greenhouse gases for all the different things that all of our inputs and all of our outputs as a campus. It's a big project to measure that stuff, but that's how you start to find solutions. We look at the financial or the profit aspect of the triple bottom line. I've had a wonderful speaker in, he's an IU alum. He's managing a $2 billion impact fund up in Indianapolis. And he says 5 years ago, he's been going to some traditional finance conference for years and years and years. He's a traditional finance guy, started out with PwC, went into higher ed, and now he's working with this foundation, which I think about going to a finance conference and a little piece of my soul dies, but somebody's got to go. But he says 5 years ago, they had a 1-hour session on impact investing, this idea of using money to promote businesses that are doing the right things. Last year, before COVID he went, 2019, they had a full day. That's in 5 years. So we can see when the CEO of BlackRock, the largest private investment firm in the country, sends out a letter and tells CEOs, you have got to start reporting on what you're doing around climate change mitigation and adaptation. You have got to have a purpose besides profit, and you've got to report on your social good, or we're going to tell our investors not to invest on you. We see activist shareholders going in and disrupting the boards of the fossil fuel companies. So there are a lot of things happening out there in the business world, and I'd like to see companies do the right thing and not force outside forces to come in and bully them into doing it. But I'll take change any way I can get it. So, and in my business and poverty alleviation class, my students design a business, a for-profit business, to target poverty. They select a region, they talk with experts there, they design a business plan, and they present them. So we're very solution focused, and I appreciate that question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure who was next, but I think Steve, you had your hand up. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I did have a question, but now I forgot what it was. Next person, please.
Okay, Charlotte, did you have a question? You're muted, Charlotte.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. She kind of answered it already. I was going to ask her whether she encouraged her students to become donors. We heard a lot about philanthropy last week, and that is a way to affect change. But I also, I love the triple bottom line idea. And I wonder, my wondering recently has been, how do we help people who do not believe that they can contribute well to this world, develop aspirations that would be productive? Because I know very smart people who don't think they can do anything, and that therefore, settle for less than they are able to offer. And that's a question that I wonder if she has some thoughts on. Like we had a businesses at Middleway which were created specifically to provide jobs for women where they learn. And I wonder if how we can make that a larger program for the world.
Well, in my teaching, I mean, I think I do this most directly in the business and poverty alleviation class, where the students are actually creating this business plan.
Mhm.
But also in my sustainability law and poverty class, my students are doing what we call service learning projects. So they're going out
Yeah.
and they're trying to solve problems within the community. We've used IU as our client, and it's been great. We worked with IU Dining a few times. We just worked with the IU Center for Rural Engagement this past semester. And so the students are looking at the ways that they can use their talents to address community problems. In terms of, I have a lot of students who come to me. I mean, they're taking electives. They're taking their classes because they want to study the material, which is a real treat for me as a professor. But they'll come to me and say, my major is accounting. I don't know how I'm going to have an impact. And I just talk to them about, live your values. I mean, that's how you have an impact. Live your values. If you can't in your job be focused on these types of broad sustainability goals, well, I mean, what are you going to do around your children's school? What kind of organizations are you going to join? What kind of boards are you going to serve on? Because you should serve on boards. It's really good for you. It gets you engaged in the community. When there's a measure that wants to raise your property taxes, which is how we fund our schools in the United States, are you going to vote for it or against it? Because I don't have any kids, but I vote for property tax raises. I always, Oliver Wendell Holmes, the great jurist, says, I love paying taxes. With them, I buy my society. That's
a good
perfect.
quote. Yeah.
But this is the type of stuff I tell students that they can do that has an impact: is vote and volunteer and pay attention. And if all you can do is recycle and try and live a sustainable life at home, I still think that you're doing good, and that your culture of sustainability in your life influences others and has a ripple effect.
Thank you. That's a good answer.
Thank you.
Aaron?
Hi. Rotary also has a partnership with the Institute for Economics and Peace. I was wondering if you're familiar with them and their 8 pillars of positive peace. And if you want to comment on positive peace, which is a theme that I think is so vital today.
I love this question. I wish I had a better answer to it. I am not familiar with the Institute. I am very familiar with the idea of business and peace, because the head of our ethics faculty in my department, a wonderful man named Tim Fort, that you should definitely invite to come speak with you. His expertise is on business and peace, music and peace. And I don't know if this connects to the institute you're talking about and your idea of positive peace, but he just talks about the fact that if you're engaged in the marketplace with people in a way that's ethical and above board, you're not trying to trick them or undermine your competitors in ways that don't recognize market rules and regulations. That doing business builds connections. You're a lot less likely to go to war to lob a bomb at somebody with whom you have business ties, and important business ties. So we do talk about peace in the business school, but my colleague Tim Fort is truly the expert that you would want to hear from on that topic, and I think you would enjoy hearing from him.
Well, I've talked with him, and he's come to a couple of meetings, and Alan Barker has cooperated with him also in terms of music. Business and peace. So it's, yeah, we'd like to have more. I'll try to get back in touch with Tim. He's an incredible, prolific author.
Yes. I'm the co-editor of the Business Horizons, which is one of our publications at Kelly, and we just approved another article by him. So if you get him, please invite me to come and listen to him, because I don't get the opportunity to sit in his classroom like I would want to.
Okay.
Alon.
Hey, Kelly, it's really fantastic to have you with us. Thank you so much. I'm the one who Aaron just mentioned. I've worked with Tim quite a bit and very excited about the collaborations between the Jacob School of Music and the Kelly School in that way. So I have a question for you that sort of goes in a slightly different direction, because we're always struggling with this idea of structural change versus personal behavioral change. And I'm wondering, and it's always a bit depressing when you think of structural change, because there's just so much that, it just feels so weighted and so almost, unsolvable. My question to you is, are there signs, say, across the United States, for instance, or in other first world countries where you sense that people are really getting it and that they're making structural change that's really headed in a direction that's going to make a difference?
I think there are a lot of positive signs. I am not naive, but I try to avoid cynicism, because I have found that 20-year-olds will supply you with all the cynicism you need. So I don't want to be that person in the classroom. So I try and see these as positive signs. In the EU, they require sustainability and climate reporting now for large corporations. Here, the Biden administration's SEC, Security and Exchange Commission, is talking about rules that would do the same. I think activist investors like Engine One, who went into, I think it was Exxon, and disrupted their board and placed, I think it was 3 climate activists on the Exxon board. I think that's important. Royal Dutch Shell Company, just lost a major piece of litigation in the Dutch courts that ordered it to reduce emissions. So we're seeing actually litigation victories around the globe, although not in the United States, for people suing for a good climate. We're seeing regulatory issues. My speaker I told you about a few minutes ago, the guy who's managing the Impact Investing Fund, we asked him, he is not a left-wing tree-hugging liberal like me, but he's a very good man. And we asked him what he thought we needed to do. And he said, I never thought I would advocate for more regulation, but we need more regulation to force businesses to do the right things. So let's hope we can get some of that stuff passed in the next 2 years, because as we know, it's a priority of one political party and not the other here in the United States, and on an issue that shouldn't be politicized. So I don't mean to politicize it. So it's a frustration I have, but I see a lot of positive things happening around the globe. I'm hoping to go to the United Nations Conference of Parties on Climate Change in Glasgow in November. The question is whether the signatories to the Paris Climate Accord can continue to make progress. I hope so. I hope so. So I do see some positive signs out there, but as Greta Thunberg, the teenage activist from Sweden, will quickly tell you, it's not enough. It's just not enough. And Alon, you're from South Africa?
I am, yes.
My business and human rights class is actually business and human rights in South Africa.
Oh, wow.
We go to Joburg and to Limpopo province.
That's fantastic.
Every
wow.
May. So you and I will have to talk.
Absolutely. I'd love to get together with you sometime. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. Kelly, if you are able to stay a few minutes after the close, we'll get to Jim Bright's question next, but I'd like to close the program.
Right.
So in honor of your presentation today, we're making a donation to Monroe County United Ministries. So thank you for speaking with us. And Sally, will you tell us about next week's program?
Next week, June 29th on Zoom, Fiona Witkowski will be our speaker. She's an emergency medical technician, an EMT on Long Island, New York. She's going to talk about her experience managing patients during COVID, and will include information on how we can continue to keep ourselves safe.
Sounds very interesting. Looking forward to it. Natalie, will you share our 4-way test so we can say that together before we close? Of the things we think, say, or do. First,
is it
the
the truth?
truth? Second, is it fair
to all
concerned? Third, build goodwill,
Better
friendships.
Fourth, will it be beneficial
to all
concerned?
And fifth, is it fun? Thank you for being here today.